Hi, this is Paul from xBrat Software Solutions, and this is a quick video explaining the new updates to the NinjaTrader Guardian Zones, the xBrat Guardian Zones version 1.4. So we've made some slight changes to help with backtesting, but also one of my main things is try and keep charts a little cleaner. So up here we can see show projections only, that's ticked. That's the new bit here. The triangles are just for purposes for me to explain what's going to go. So I'm going to start at the bottom left and talk about this. So before, this is what it looked like before. If I uncheck that, we can see there's a lot more zones and it's a little crowded in there. But one of the main things for me is the zones you need to understand when the new zone is it's current, it's going to be effective. So if I just take that off here, we can see down on the left here, we see these pivots form. So they start to form the zone, but they're not relevant at that time until it comes to test again. So if I switch that off, you'll see here, you'll see the pink zone, which is the hourly zone. We can see that actually started to form here, but it wasn't relevant until it hit this point here. And that's why we have this toggle here, which is on default, is just to have the projections. So it doesn't matter what happens here, that's starting to build the logic to say there's a good support zone forming here on the 60-minute, and it obviously looking further left because this is a 12-minute chart, and then it starts to print where it's relevant. And we can see here that's the first test of the relevant zone. It comes up and then it finally pushes through, and then we push up to test that confluence of now the 30 and the 60, and it pushes down. Now we move further right, we can see we actually push back through there. We come back to test the 60-minute zone, and it pushes through one more time. We can see this next lot of 30-minute zones in green here. This is where they started to be relevant. If I uncheck that, you'll see this is where they were starting to be formed on those higher time frames. So I uncheck that again. This is where they start to become relevant. So we start to print the green first. This test is a good move up here, but also then the projection of the 15 in this cyan and the 60 here is now relevant for the future. So let's just move into this next zone up here. We can see we had some tests on the 30, again on the 30, and then we're coming down. So this is the test I really like here, because now we've got a 60-minute support zone. We've got that confluence of 30 and 60 together. If I uncheck that, you'll see that's where it was formed with these previous tests, okay? But they're not relevant, because when you come to a chart, you need to understand what's relevant to you right now. So if we check that again, when it comes down to test, that's the relevant one here. And the same with this top short here. If we check, we can see it started, the logic started to actually print that, but it's not relevant until this point. Again, uncheck it, and this is where we come through. And again, look at this, the force of coming through here, pushing through this confluence of zones. So it's a slight modification, but it cleans the charts up a little better, but it also helps you back test properly, because you need to know when the zones started and when they are relevant. So we come down and we test. This test here, that's the relevant zone down at the bottom, okay? And then obviously we move back up again. We've got, further tests. This is when the zone is relevant. That's when we start to print. So when it comes to test after that point, that's when it's relevant. And again, up here we can see this zone printed after this pivot. It's not tested again for quite some time, okay? So, but that's when it becomes relevant, and that's the important thing here. So here, there's no trade here when we're back testing. This is just starting to form the zone. These are the ones, that's when we start to print the zone that's going to be relevant. It hits, it comes down. It hits, it comes down. It hits, it comes down. Eventually it pushes through that 60-minute zone, then it comes down for support. So again, slight changes, but I think what it will do is allow back testing properly when you're using the Guardian zones, by keeping those charts a little bit more clutter free. Hopefully that helps, and this really was for our current users that are getting the new version, but also for those new subscribers so they can understand a little bit more about the Guardian zones.